This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system.
Every cannabis company has its own unique needs, and one size does not fit all. That's why I want to tell you guys about Regrow. Designed by software experts passionate about cannabis and the success of the industry, Regrow is a premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system built to be customizable and adapt to a company's scaling objectives, offering unlimited integrations and flexibility. Imagine software features such as cultivation planning and crop forecasting, automated workflows with built-in compliance, single system of record for critical data, dashboards to visualize the entire supply chain, or even predictive analytics to forecast yields, demand, and revenue or costs. If you're a cannabis company searching for a strategic business partner to help you automate your business, scale effectively, and make the supply chain work for you, then you need to talk to the team at Regrow. Visit their website at regrow.io. That's regrow.io. Hello everyone, Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is Nirup Krishnamurthy, COO at Schwazze. Hello, Nirup. How are you, sir?
Good, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for making time for me and my listeners. We're really excited to be talking to you.
Likewise.
Awesome. So, hey, for those listening, as I mentioned, I have Nirup Krishnamurthy on the episode today, and he's the Chief Operating Officer at Schwazze, which is a vertically integrated cannabis holding company with a portfolio consisting of top-tier licensed brands spanning cultivation, extraction, infused product manufacturing, dispensary operations, consulting, and nutrition line. So, Nirup, that's the boilerplate from the press release. That's the Google kind of company description. But before we jump into the company, let's talk a little about you and your background. So I know that you've been in other industries before getting to cannabis, right? I know that from my research, you were at United Airlines for a while, the airline industry. So talk a little bit about your professional career and what made you transition into cannabis.
Yeah, let me do that. So, I've had a long background, obviously, and I started my career at United Airlines back in the 90s, was at United for 14 years and really looked at all aspects of the company. I've been looking at all aspects of the company there. Started off in finance, went into information services, and was their CIO during my last stint with them. And United, as you know, was a $25 billion enterprise, but also went through 9/11 and the airline, as part of the airline industry, and we had to restructure the company to bring it back to profitability. And it was a major undertaking that we went through, and I was part of the team that helped through that process. So it was a life-changing experience for me, and we was very successful. And that's when I got into understanding every single aspect of the operation, and was able to help restructure the company. And so following that, I went into banking. I was at Northern Trust Bank, again, as part of their worldwide operations and technology division, and helped them do something very similar. The banking industry was flushed with cash, and they were not really focused on, operational efficiency, etc., because they were very profitable. But between around 2005 to 2008, there was the financial institution went through what they had to go through, and as we all know, there was the crash of 2008, and so they had to restructure themselves as well to get to.
So let me get this straight, Nirup. You're in the airline industry, and you basically operate within the landscape of 9/11, right? And you go through that, and then you jump into the banking and finance industry, and then the housing market crashes in 2008. Wow.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so it was, while financially it was good for me, but it was a lot of work and a lot of learning, and really helped me understand uh, to for a couple of things. One is not to get faced by any challenge that's put in front of you, because all challenges can be resolved and solved. That's with the right kind of effort and the right team around you. And and number two, uh, you need to be patient. Patience solves a lot of things, and so I learned quite a bit during those two stints. And then, following the banking stint, I left at the end of 2008 uh, to get into retail. So that's when I got into food retail. Again, it was a company that was in trouble. It's A&P. They had been mismanaged, I would say, and there was a restructuring effort. And I was their chief strategy officer, ran their supply chain, ran a lot of their back office in the stores, and
You were the clean.
pardon me?
You were the cleanup guy.
Yes, cleanup guy, restructure the place, bring it into a shape there where it can be. It was good for a merger with some other company, and that's when I hooked up with Justin Dye, who's our chairman and CEO here at Schwazze. And he was in Albertsons and part of their M&A team. And I met him, and we sold half the company, half of the grocery company that I was in A&P, to Albertsons. And so that was my first interaction with him. So following that transaction, I helped another company in a smaller grocery chain go through a divestiture from its parent company. Again, it helped them to do a standalone business. And then Justin Dye, he resigned from Albertsons, and I hooked up with him, and we started Dye Capital, which is a private family business office from a PE standpoint, private equity kind of office. And so, as part of that, we made a few investments and started up a couple of companies, made a few investments. And then we started looking at cannabis back in today is 2020. So back in 2018, we started looking into cannabis because a couple of things. One was we looked at the space and said, well, one, yes, the cannabis has this taboo out there, but it has so many good elements to it in terms of health management for people,
right?
And the fact that it was getting more and more mainstream, it gave us the impetus to look into it and say, I think we should make a play in this business.
And what drew you to that conclusion? I mean, was it kind of just research that you had done online? Was it kind of firsthand experience, maybe with consuming the plant, other maybe testimonials that you encountered? What was it?
A lot of it was research that we did ourselves. We met a whole bunch of players in the space back then, and then as we started doing that, we started talking to people who actually had live experiences and how some of their health situations was kind of alleviated through the use of cannabis. And then I personally did not even know medical marijuana existed back then. And so I got into that space, and then I talked to some of my doctor friends, and I saw that there was a lot more usage of the products than I thought it was back then. And so then we got into it, and I also saw a bunch of research that was going on solving major health issues like like cancer and like epilepsy and a whole bunch of other things, sleep disorders, etc., dementia. So that's what got us interested. And then the fact is uh, um, that it's becoming more and more mainstream. To us, it looked like, um, you know, the the prohibition days in the 1930s. It is very similar kind of aspect, and we thought we could make an investment in this business.
Yeah.
And that's when we met up with the former CEO of Medicine Man Technologies, now called Schwazze.
So yeah,
And
let me pause you right there, because I wanna kind of break this up, as you're walking us through this journey. And so as you did your research, talked with medical professionals, learned more about the medicinal benefits of the cannabis plant and the various cannabinoids, what else kind of struck you in this industry? What was something like, I mean, and another question is, what was the reaction from some of your peers in other industries? I always ask this question, right? You went from banking into cannabis, you were in the airline industry. So those peers, did they kind of, with that taboo that you mentioned, were they skeptical of your decision? Were they judgmental of your decision? What was their feedback?
I will tell you, for most part, they were not judgmental. I mean, they were, in fact, most of the people we talked to ended up investing with us into that vehicle that we brought in. So it was, I did not see much of pushback. I will say that from my community, there was some pushback. I'm from India, and so the Indian community had some pushback when I told some of my friends. But other than that, it was pretty much, people are very open to this, and they know it's coming. And so, and they even gave me other reasons. They said, hey, listen, this is, if this can help other people from getting off addictive drugs, that's another plus point. And so there's a lot of plus points we saw in this. And plus, recreational marijuana is here, and why support a black market industry? Let's make it legal, and let's use tax revenues for the benefits of people in the states. And so there's a whole bunch of confluence of reasons. And apart from the fact it's a good investment, there is good returns on this investment. So all of that put together, we kind of decided this is the right place to invest in.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, you named a lot of pros, right? Of course. And it's all good reasons of why to get into the space. So now, okay, so you mentioned medical men, right? So, and the origin of Schwazze. So go ahead and medicine man, excuse me. Go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
So Medicine Man Technologies was a consulting company. And then basically it was founded by Andy Williams and a couple of others. And they were essentially they were doing three different businesses. One was they were helping others, cannabis industries, getting their licensing and getting their cultivation farms set up, and helping consulting work, if you so to speak. And then we also had a nutritional line called Success Nutrients that was basically, again, helping the farms with better fertilizers and nutrients to be more productive on the plant side. And thirdly, they had a hydroponic store called Big Tomato, which is basically selling pots and pans and spades for growing cannabis. So that was the extent of the business, but they had a vision around creating this vertically integrated company in Colorado. But they was looking for they're looking for funding, for investment funding. And that's when we met them back in December of 2018. And we started doing a lot of research into the company, into the people, into all the prospects in the state. And then in May of 2018, we decided to make the investment through an initial die capital vehicle. And that's when we came in. So that was it.
So it was basically you coming in, providing the funding, and that strategic kind of go-to-market strategy.
Right, and the leadership now. So So that's what we did. You're right.
Got you. Okay. And so, I mean, Nirup, with your background being, hyper focused on operational efficiency within organizations, if you had to name like the top three components, key components of an effective operational strategy, what would those be?
Well, I will tell you that in this industry, the industry from a operation standpoint is not as mature as you can imagine. To some of the other industries that I have been in, because the industry is new. There is not a good supply chain. There is not good operating metrics. It's not data driven. Because if you think about it, the industry was developed by entrepreneurs, and they don't have the level of sophistication to scale. Yeah, can I run a couple of dispensaries and keep it profitable? Yes. But if I want to have a company that has 50 dispensaries, a few farms, a few MIPS, and it's going to be many $100 million in revenues, you need people, process, and infrastructure in place to scale and drive efficiencies. And that's kind of what's lacking in this industry. And a couple of companies are out there building it as MSOs, like Curaleaf and a couple of other Trulieve and others.
Yeah.
But in Colorado, it's pretty fragmented. And what our vision is to go deep into Colorado, is to build a vertically integrated company that is a premier player in the state and has significant market share. And to do that, you need a robust kind of platform on which we can pile these companies on as we buy them. And we need to have scalability. And those are some of the things that we are trying to put in place right now. There's obviously some other things that we bring to the table in terms of sophistication and modeling. How do we do pricing? How do you do assortment planning? What is our branding strategy? Those are all, things that we can bring to the table that doesn't exist as much as we want in this industry as a whole, let alone Schwazze.
Right. Yeah. No, that point has come up several times on the podcast where, you've got these legacy players that have started in the black market and know the plant so well, right? From cultivation to the science behind it, or even, having and owning and operating a small mom and pop dispensary, right? In a couple locations. And they have that experience. And now you see new entrants, new players coming in that are at the executive level, at the mid-management level, that are professionals from other industries, right? And so it's this kind of great collaboration of the two. But there needs to be somewhat of a balance, I think, right? Because
yes,
both sides bring a lot to the table in terms of their knowledge and experience and expertise. So, you agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about that balance, right?
absolutely. So if you're right on. We have assembled a team here at Schwazze that has significant cannabis experience, and we are surrounding that cannabis experience with people from other industries who have structure and who have scale, and who can bring to bear running P&Ls and aggressively growing sales and EBITDA. And so the marriage of those two teams is what's going to make us successful. And we believe that we have built the team internally now at Schwazze to make that happen. And so we are pretty proud of the team we have assembled. And it is critical for success. I don't think people from other industries can just come in and try to run this thing on their own and make it successful. It's just not going to happen. You need to get into it. And look, within time, we'll all be, I spent a couple of years here. I'm going to know enough about cannabis. We are all good students. We want to learn about the industry so that we can bring to bear our experiences from other industries to be successful here. So.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, we're continuing, we're just continued students, right, of the plant, and that's kind of true for everyone, I would say. I mean, especially for new entrants like myself, and as you mentioned, you've come from other industries. We're thinking every day about this, but so is everyone else, because we really have only scratched the surface with the science and the knowledge behind it. I mean, over 150 cannabinoids in the plant, right, and we're just learning about some of them. So
we know very little about the plant.
Right.
Even the folks in the cannabis industry know very little about the plant.
Right.
And so there is a lot more to be learned. We also have an innovation arm we are setting up here, R&D and innovation arm at Schwazze, that is going to do some of that. Get into the plant. How can we use the different cannabinoids? What can they be used for? How can we extract? How can we use some of the other things as we extract the plants, as we extract the distillate out of the plants? How can we use the terpenes? What kind of flavors do we need, et cetera, et cetera? There is a lot of work going on that front, in our side. So there's a lot more. This industry is just beginning, and so you're going to see a lot more.
Yeah, and that's a good segue, because it seems like the steps that we're taking are in the right direction. Even, at the state, local, and federal level, right? I think just yesterday I read that the Senate passed the Marijuana Research Expansion Act without opposition. So I think that bill requires the DOJ to increase the number of medical researchers who can study cannabis. So you can tell that even federally, they're a lot more open to us learning about this plant because of how much science has lacked over the years due to the federal regulation, right?
Exactly. If there is benefits to be had, we need to figure out what it is. And I'm glad that, the federal government is starting to recognize that, and they're starting to open up gradually the research on it, so that we can understand the true benefits of these plants and what it can do for us. And my hope is over the next several years, it gets more and more open, and we really understand, and we open up to this plant. We open up to its benefits, and we're able to leverage it for humanity.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. And we're even kind of seeing this momentum happen at the global level too. The fact that the UN recently descheduled cannabis from their single convention on narcotics is another great step, even at the global level. But speaking more, domestic, so here in the U.S., the Electoral College has spoken. President-elect Joe Biden and his administration will be starting in January. So what is your kind of future outlook for the cannabis industry in 2021 and say beyond?
Listen, we believe that the Biden administration is generally more favorable to easing the restrictions on the cannabis industry from a federal level. And so we hope that happens. And there are a couple of different steps, right? One of the key things to developing this industry is to open up investment opportunities, right? And that's the first thing we need to be able to do, which is, I think it comes from what we call, a Safe Banking Act. So if you're able to do safe banking, then the big banks and the investment companies can look at this industry and say, hey, let's invest in this industry. And so I think that's kind of a key first step. We need to understand that. And if we're able to get that through this administration, that'll be a great boon for the industry as a whole. Federal legalization is going to take time, but I think that we have to take it in small steps, and we'll take any steps that this administration can provide to help ease some of the restrictions we have.
Yeah.
And the 280E is another. The tax implications of that is another restriction that if that is lifted or at least eased, that's going to help this industry quite a bit. So, get us safe banking, get some relief on the 280E, and then finally end up legalization. Good, if it takes a few years, that's fine. But as long as we see progress, they're happy.
Yeah, I think that those are great points, man. Those are very significant legislative measures that the federal government could take to at least ease up on some of the and challenges to entry that this industry faces, right? I mean, the fact that you cannot write off tax deductions for, say, full-time employees or even contract workers is crazy. You can't write off, any type of business expenses is just another way in which it's more difficult to enter into the space. And
exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot write off operating expenses, and so unless it's plant touching expense, and so it's a huge restriction. It's a huge kind of burden on the business.
Yeah. Well, and those are definitely key legislative measures, as I mentioned. Another is like talking more broadly about federal reform, right? And deregulation. I don't think it's enough if we just deschedule, right, to Schedule 2 or Schedule 3. I mean, there's still going to be the same issues that we're currently facing because it's still listed as a scheduled narcotic. So
yes, it's got to be completely delisted. It's got to be fully legalized, like alcohol.
Right.
And that's when it's going to be true. And I don't think that's going to happen in the next couple of years. It's going to take longer than that. But as long as you're making progress, that's all we count.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Pharmaceuticals cannot invest in this business today. And if there is so much health benefits, I would like, Abbott Labs to get a handle on it, see what they can do with it, what benefits we can get out of it, right? So, but they can't, and so there's plenty of leeway ahead.
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen, like you said, the next 2 years at the federal level, the federal government's hand is going to be forced at some point because the states are going to overturn these laws in time. I mean, how many states are up for this vote for adult use or even medical use in these different states come January? I know that New Mexico, five, Texas is another, right?
Not Texas. New Jersey. Forget the names. New Jersey and Kansas. I can't remember the names right now, but there are 5. As part of the election, the 5 states, 5 new states have opened up.
Right.
For recreational marijuana. It's a matter of time. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
That's right. 100%. Yes, you're right, Nirup. So let's talk a little bit about like the elephant in the room, and that is the pandemic that we've undergo this year in 2020, this weird year. What was it like growing the business during the pandemic? What were some challenges or opportunities that you guys encountered? And what are you seeing post-pandemic moving forward?
Yeah, I think for us, the biggest challenge at least in Colorado, the cannabis was deemed as an essential business. So we were able to keep our stores open and keep the operation kind of going through the process. The biggest challenge we faced was in the speed at which we could close our acquisition. So the fundraising became much tighter. It was already tight to begin with, given the restrictions on this industry, and people got a lot more conservative in their investments during the course of the year, and so it delayed some of our acquisition kind of timelines. But the business as a whole, saw an increase. Colorado saw a 25% increase, 20% increase in sales this year in the cannabis.
Wow.
And that, I think, we don't know why that is the case, but I think we get the whole stimulus checks and money coming into people's homes and people not working. Basically saw an increase in consumption during, from the March to the October timeframe. There was a significant spike in sales because of the pandemic. And so whether it is a permanent spike or not, we'll see as 2021 comes along. But we had a the cannabis industry as a whole had a great year in terms of sales.
Yeah, the sales that you mentioned in Colorado, that was also kind of echoed in Illinois. I posted on social media, was it yesterday, that alcohol sales versus marijuana sales were almost even throughout the entire year this year. So it's just kind of showing that, to your point, people are looking to cannabis as an alternative from alcohol.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it is definitely, it is not addictive, and it is it has very little, it does very little health impacts versus stuff like alcohol. And so um, so there's going to be a migration. I think it's going to happen. And if you look at what happens is, the other thing I'll tell you from a trend standpoint, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, when this industry was just starting up, 80% of the sales or higher was flower. Today, 50% of the market is flower. So
moving to different types of consumption methods. What is?
Yeah, so there is migration to edibles, to beverages, to vapes, and other forms of consumption that is just non-flower. I mean, the overall flower demand is still going up, but as because the industry is growing, but as a share of revenue, it's closer to 50%, 51% or something like that this year versus 80, 90% 5-7 years ago. And so you'll see that, and that's where it comes in. So today you can go get bath salts that has cannabis in it. You can go buy, creams, like lotions, and there is migration to health and wellness kind of categories.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to see that trend continue, in my mind. The flower will always be the primary driver of sales, but as we get into mainstream usage of cannabis products, you're going to see a lot more migration to health and wellness, edibles, and beverages. You're going to see that market grow over the next decade.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a good thing, right? Because it just allows for more consumers to enter the space. Because
yes, that's a growth opportunity for
yeah,
the industry. And traditional homes that do not consume flower, don't want their house having the fragrance of flower, so to speak, are much more open to edibles and much more open to, and if there's health and wellness products like pain relieving creams or sleep aids that has cannabis in it, that'll be much, that whole segment of the population will be much more open to using those products. And so it is just starting, but there's not enough branding and marketing around it, and it is, and so we need to there has to be some focus on that area to get into traditional homes, if you will.
Yeah, and as we're learning more about the medicinal benefits of the plant, Dr. Stuart Titus was on, and he mentioned, I believe it was Dr. Russo who came up with the notion of endocannabinoid deficiency, and how, of course, the endocannabinoid system is biologically married to these cannabinoids, right, through our CB1 and CB2 and even receptors.
Right.
But as you talk about more forms of delivery and consumption with the product, that's just great, because you may want to smoke a joint for THC for recreation or creative purposes, but then you may want to put CBD in your coffee in the morning, which I love to do, in terms of for your inflammation or anything like that. So as we kind of dial it in and learn more about these cannabinoids, those delivery systems are going to be even more important, because they're going to tackle different areas of our ailments that we're looking to target.
You're right. You said it better than me. So it's exactly right. And so the delivery systems are always, we're always going to find new and better ways of delivering these products to the consumers and the usage. And and there's a lot more research to be done on that. There's quite a bit. Right. I mean, the one thing about the cannabis industry is cannabinoids is it is, it is, the experience is different by individual. No, it's not like taking Tylenol for pain because 99.9% of the population get the same result when we use it. In the cannabis space, it's very individual experience. It's an individual experience, and so calibration and all of that stuff comes into play. When if only you know how much you can take, how much it'll help you. So that's what we'll have to get to understanding a lot more, so we can understand delivery, and be able to give a more predictable outcomes on consumption, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I never thought of it that way because, of course, even outside of cannabis, different foods affect people differently, smells, tastes, things like that, right? So we're all different as human beings, but like a standard over-the-counter medicine like Tylenol or ibuprofen has the same, like you said, 99.9% same effect. But when you're dealing with cannabis, you have to really be prescriptive and ensure dosing is correct because everybody deals with it differently, right? And reacts to
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. So
it's a great comparison. Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. But I think there is, over time we're going to get there. We will get there. There's plenty of smart people, scientists working on this stuff. They'll continue to work on this, and time will get us these answers.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a good way to kind of close. So, I mean, we touched on the various delivery, systems and forms of delivery with cannabis, and of course how that's important for our endocannabinoid system and how these cannabinoids react to our bodies. But how important is it to focus on the evolution of innovation and continuing to innovate in this industry as we move forward?
It is of paramount importance. I mean, R&D and innovation is of, I would say, almost the most important thing in this industry as we evolve this industry into the mainstream, and figure out how best we can use this plant to help us all. And I think the recreational side will always be there, and it's going to be probably the next 5 years that is still going to be the dominant player in terms of revenues. But the R&D aspect of it has huge long-term implications for the world, I would say.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Well, Nirup, I really appreciate you being on today. Where can people find Schwazze's website and social media if they wanted to find more information?
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that. It's as simple as www.schwazze.com. So once you go in there, you could.
And let's spell it out for them. So so it's SCHWAZZE, Schwazze.
That's correct.
Yes.
And the name Schwazze comes from a technique that we use in our cultivation we call them schwazzing the plant, to increase productivity of the plant, to create more flower, to create more weight on the plant. And so the name comes directly from one of the techniques we use here to grow plants.
Nice. I love how you tied that in. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, Nirup, thank you so much again for your time. Really appreciate it. I know that our listeners got a lot out of it, and I look forward to potentially having you on again if you'll be open to it, as things evolve.
Absolutely, Kevin. Very nice talking to you. I enjoyed it, and I hope people find it useful. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you all for listening. Bye.